Do you ever think that everything that we are taught, I'm not talking about religion at the moment, everything that we are taught, about science particularly, just could be wrong, and there may be some frightful flaw that nobody's thought about? Yes. Has that ever occurred to you? Yes. Something really fundamental. I mean, in either mathematics or science itself, or anything you like. What would you say then? Any idea
what the molecule structure
yes,
might be
here
wrong.
We are. The molecule structure might be wrong.
I mean, the molecules that we know are based on carbon.
Ah, now, who told you this?
Our science master.
And you just accept it?
Naturally.
I believe, you know, that we're all nowadays too conventional and too regimented. We believe what we're told, and we do as we are told. What I want to do in this programme is to examine the ideas and the views of some people who aren't shackled in this way, who are quite prepared to go out on a limb and think for themselves. Now, whether they're right or whether they're wrong is neither here nor there. I may fundamentally disagree with quite a lot of what we're going to hear. This doesn't matter. This is merely a question of personal opinion. Let's take an example. One of these independent thinkers is the Reverend P.H. Francis, Vicar of Stoughton in Sussex, and let it be said at once that he's no amateur. He holds an excellent mathematics degree from Cambridge University. He's taught mathematics for many years, and he still does. One of his theories is that the Earth is not kept warm by heat from the sun.
The idea that there are flaming bodies dashing all round about the place is complete nonsense. It's everybody assumes it because everybody else didn't know. Everybody's afraid to be different from everybody else.
I'm sure that Mr. Francis is right when he says that we tend to accept what we're told. And I wonder if everything now is so stereotyped and conventional that independent thought is stifled early on. And if so, does school play a part in the stifling? I decided to ask the boys of Homewood House, near Tunbridge Wells, whether they accepted everything that their masters told them, or whether they were ready to strike out along an independent line. Yes. Why does snow fall down?
It's freezing.
It's water freezing.
And it's too heavy to be held up by the atmosphere, so it falls down.
Why does it fall down? This is the point.
Well,
gravity, yes. Now, what's gravity? Do you know?
I think Newton discovered it.
Yes, now, one at a time. What do you think gravity is?
Well, it is, as it says, a push or a pull, which makes things fall towards the earth.
This is what you've been told, isn't it?
Yes.
Have you ever tried to prove it?
Yes.
What about you? Yes.
Well, you throw a stone up in the air, it comes down again.
I know it does. What would you say, for example, of someone who said that the universe ended in a blank wall? Would you think this was reasonable?
No. That's illogical. That is what's on the other side.
Come on, you haven't had to say it yet. What do you think about it all?
Well, if it does end at the wall, what's on the other side of the wall? There can't be just nothing. There's got to be something.
If on the other hand, if on the other hand the universe doesn't end, then it's got to go on forever, hasn't it? Well, can you imagine that?
No.
Of course you can't.
It's like a road, never ending and never beginning.
Do you ever question this? I mean, do you ever think that everything that we are taught, I'm not talking about religion at the moment, everything that we are taught, about science particularly, just could be wrong, and there may be some frightful flaw that nobody's thought about? Has that ever occurred to you? Something really fundamental. I mean, in either mathematics or science itself, or anything you like. What would you say then? Any idea
the molecule structure
yes,
might be
here we are.
wrong.
The molecule structure might be wrong.
I mean, the molecules that we know are based on carbon.
Ah, now, who told you this?
Our science master.
And you just accept it?
Naturally, because I can't think of anything else that it could be made up of.
I see. Well, that's a jolly good reason.
Some unheard of thing.
Very fair. They think for themselves, but perhaps only within certain limits. We must accept some things, I know that, but there's a danger that we're going to turn into regimented sheep if we accept too much. Or have we already done it? And I very much fear that I'm one of these sheep already. I've become ultra-conventional. I believe that the Earth is a planet, a globe nearly 8,000 miles across going around the Sun. I believe that the Moon is another globe going around the Earth, that the Sun is a star, and that the other stars are themselves suns. And I base this upon what I hope is reasonable interpretation of the facts as I've been told them, and the things that I've seen through this telescope. As the astronauts went moonward, they could see the Earth. And to most people, this new view confirmed that the world is a globe, but not to everyone. of Mr. Samuel Shenton, president of the International Flat Earth Society, who lives in Dover and who believes the Earth is shaped like a gramophone record, with the North Pole in the middle and a wall of ice all round the edge. The North Pole in the middle and the South Pole all round?
Yes.
In fact, there isn't any South Pole.
No. The 60,000 miles was round the ice barrier, and so far, man has not gone across the ice barrier to investigate any further.
There's one theory I can think of which was completely wrong, but which nevertheless led to some rather interesting research. And that was the idea that the Earth is the inside of a hollow sphere. So that Australia's above our heads somewhere, the sun's in the middle, surrounded by a crystal sphere upon which the stars are etched, and the Earth extends below our feet infinitely in all directions and rises up like this, so to speak. Well, it's a fascinating idea, and in the early 1930s it percolated through to Germany, and the City Council of Magdeburg offered to finance a rocket to be sent out vertically to see whether in fact it would crash land in Australia. They took this idea to the German rocket experimenters, people like Werner von Braun, and they did in fact finance and launch 2 rockets to test the theory. In fact, the first rocket rose to about 10 feet and then exploded. On the second occasion, the rocket launching was horizontal instead of vertical, so the entire thing was inconclusive. Certainly, von Braun and his workers had no faith whatever in hollow globes, but all the same, these independent thinkers did finance some research which, at the time, was jolly useful. Flat Earths, hollow Earths. In either case, the Earth would be the most important body in the universe. That was the ancient idea, and it isn't dead yet. What the independent thinker has to do is to start absolutely from scratch, look out into the universe, take what he sees there, and then put his own independent opinion on it without bothering about anybody else. And this is exactly what has been done by Mr. John Bradbury of Ashton-under-Lyne, who's thrown all orthodoxy out of the window and has constructed a picture of the universe that is all his own, based partly upon theory and partly upon observations made with his strictly unorthodox telescope. Well, Mr. Bradbury, this looks like a conventional telescope, but I gather it isn't.
No, it's far from being a conventional telescope because it isn't split up in the lenses. Most of the lenses in this telescope are at the eye end.
Down here,
the
you mean?
eyepiece end, yes. Yes, there's only one object lens at the other end.
What's the purpose of having so many lenses?
Well, you can't get the power without. You must have the power to bring the object very much closer. With a conventional telescope, you can't do that.
I would have thought that every time you passed a beam of light through an extra lens, you'd lose a bit of light.
Yes, that is so, that you do lose light. But looking at objects in the sky, you don't need to lose it.
Looking at your map of the Earth, it looks to me as if you've got the North Pole in the middle and all directions are south. Is this correct?
Yes.
You know, I think you're going to be the first to admit that these ideas and theories of yours are not conventional ones.
Correctly, yes.
Well, I know that you've also given lectures at various universities. I mean, I wasn't at your lecture at Cambridge University or at Keele, but I heard about the people who were. And how do you find that other people react to your ideas?
Well, some people, of course, when it's all explained thoroughly, they will accept it. But if it isn't explained thoroughly, well, of course, they think we're nutcases or something, you see.
One trouble about the independent thinker is that he finds it very difficult indeed to prove himself right. But equally certainly, it's very difficult to prove him wrong. And if you think about it, you know, you can't prove a negative. For example, I can't prove to you that the sun's going to rise in the east tomorrow morning. I think it is, because all the evidence I have indicates that way, but I can't absolutely prove it. And this is the way all the way through. And history, too, is studied with people who were in some cases right and in others wrong. Consider the people who first maintained that the Earth goes round the sun instead of the other way round. People like Aristarchus in Greek times and Copernicus in the 16th century. They were regarded as quite definitely eccentric. And in the early part of the 17th century, there was a tremendous storm about it, and it even led to a trial in Rome in which Galileo, the great scientist, was accused of impiety. And then coming on to more modern times, what about Sir William Herschel, probably the greatest observational astronomer who's ever lived, and who only died in 1822, but who nevertheless believed that there were people living inside the sun? And then there was Simon Newcomb, a man who did tremendous work in astronomy, and who proved, to his own satisfaction, that the aeroplane would never fly. In fact, he said that the only practicable form of flying machine was something pulled by a large crop of little birds. Then we had Professor Lowell, a great American astronomer, whose mathematical researches led to the discovery of the new planet Pluto. But he believed that there were canals on the planet Mars, and that Mars was the seat of a brilliantly intelligent race who would cover the entire world with a kind of irrigation system. History is studied with people like this. They can't prove they're right. Equally certainly, it's difficult to prove that they're wrong. But summing up as a whole, what are we going to make of this whole theme of independent thought? Well, first of all, our independent thinker's got to be rather a special kind of person because he's got to be absolutely free from any conventionality. If he isn't, then he's going to be shackled from the outset and he'll never go out on a limb and make possible progress. Secondly, his researches have got to be potentially beneficial. And this, I think, is very important, and it does apply certainly to everyone we've been talking to. And thirdly, in some cases anyway, there's a kind of, well, not exactly a metaphysical trend, that wouldn't be the right word, but at least a groping for something we don't really understand. And who knows, our independent thinkers may in fact get hold of it. Sometimes they're right, very often they're wrong. But again, this again, surely, is very much a matter of personal opinion. I'm not going to break free myself, you know. I'm never going to believe in the cold sun or the flat earth or flying saucers or astrology, but I do realize how much poorer the world would be without these people of independent thought. But as for myself, I'm going to remain a cozy little conventionalist for the rest of my life, and I know it. But I may well be missing something. Dear Sir, one evening, many years ago in Glasgow, I noticed a series of round balls travelling round 3 walls of a room. Whatever was causing the images, about 3 or 4 inches in diameter, I looked and could discover nothing. Then I noticed that stars in the sky were fading, and that as they faded, my balls disappeared.